Springtime is a great time to hit the UP woods and search for wild edibles.
This is perhaps the most treasured of all wild things in the woods.
I sent the camera gear out with the 906 Outdoors Turkey Brothers for some springtime hunting action. 9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. .906 Outdoors is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours. Need I say more?
So it's springtime, which means morel season. This is a yellow morel, or Morchella americanum or americana. When we're morel hunting, we're looking for trees. It's not about looking at the ground everywhere. You've got to narrow down your focus because they only work in symbiosis or ectomycorrhizal relationships with a living tree for so long. Then as that tree begins to die and decline, it puts off what we think of as a mushroom, which is the fruiting body, and it puts out those spores looking for a new host. Now this is an ash tree. It's starting to show a little bit of decline, but not a whole lot. And that's good because the first few years it's in decline, it's when it puts off the most. You will find them around dead trees or trees that have a lot of the bark falling off, but generally speaking, the first year or two, whenever it begins to shed its bark, or before that even, is when you get the most off of them. There are many hosts that morels, whether it's black or the yellow morel, there are many different hosts for them. For the black morels, white pines, black cherry, popple is a very big one. And then for the yellow morel, apple trees, white ash, black ash, and the big one is the American elm tree, right? And so we are going to harvest these. There's a lot of debate about harvest, whether you pluck or pinch or cut. I'm of the school of cut. And what that looks like is parallel to the ground, right? When you cut a morel, you know it's a morel because morels are hollow inside. You see this cavity here? This cavity, you see, is completely hollow. If there was a piece of tissue that joined across solid right here, and these look more like brain folds than deep pits or hidnums, right? It would be a different kind of mushroom, obviously, and it would be either the Verpa bohemica, Verpa conica, or if it looked like a brainy mass, that's Gyrometra esculenta. Some people mistakenly refer to those as the beefsteak mushroom, which is actually a different kind of mushroom. Beefsteaks are red and they cut and bleed, and they grow on oak trees in particular. But this is perhaps the most treasured of all wild things in the woods. If you weren't aware of this, more people search for morels every year in the forest than hunt turkeys, which I think is an absolutely awesome thing. So head out to Upper Stop and see what you can find, eh?
906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Blades Bait and Tackle, your year-round connection to fishing bait knock.
So it's still springtime. We're headed out to the forest and we're going to harvest wild ramps, or Allium trichoceum. And it is a delicacy known the world over. They occur virtually throughout the eastern U.S., from Canada to Georgia or Florida. And they've been eradicated in many areas, both through human consumption and over harvest. The dairy farmers used to spray these and get rid of them in their woods because the cows love them and they eat them and it would taint the milk. Same thing with the beef. So they would literally eradicate them. And so they were, for a long time, harder to find, and they're really making a comeback now. It's one of America's favorite wild foods. And we're gonna go out and harvest them. And I'm gonna teach you how to do it sustainably so that you can not only pick spots year after year, but your children can enjoy those spots as well. They have many different names: ramps, ramp sons, wild leeks, leeks of the forest, all mean the same thing. Ramps kind of specific about their soil. They like nice loamy soil, much like maple and oak and a lot of elms and ash, etc. We're gonna harvest the bigger, fatter ones in particular. Some of these are starting to put off their flower spikes, which you can come back later in summer in a couple weeks and collect the seeds from these and propagate them yourself if you chose to. You will need to freeze or vernalize them first. They need to go through a cold period before the seeds become viable. So what I'm doing is just kind of clearing the debris so I don't have any sticks or anything in here, and I'm not chopping any. That's one of the bigger parts of what I'm doing. I don't want to actually cut any. But I'm gonna come out, maybe a shovel width. This is my little favorite shovel to use in the woods. Then I'm gonna try to work my way underneath of it. And here we have beautiful wild ramp. So this is harvested bulb and all, which is a way to harvest it. Every bit of this is edible with the exception of the flower spike. These leaves taste like a garlic mustard green with a sweet onion bite. The bulb has a very sweet onion meets mild shallot, so it has a hint of garlic, but it has a very pronounced sweetness thing going on. It's a delicacy that is very hard to describe, and I personally prefer this to every other onion. What's awesome about these guys is you can harvest them, preserve them easily for later, simply by taking this bulb and putting it in your freezer. It's that easy, right? Or you can saute them, same thing with the greens. You can make a delicious pesto out of these that's second to none. You can make an amazing sriracha or hot sauce out of them too, and there's great recipes online for that. One of the overlooked parts of this plant is the roots. The roots of all onions and garlic are actually edible, and they're delicious. One of my favorite things to do is make deviled eggs, and then I take those roots and I just make like a little nest on top, and it looks cool, but it has a pronounced delicious bite. And once people realize that the root's edible too, you realize you've been maybe throwing away the best part for a long time. So this is a way to harvest these, which is to dig them. There are other ways to harvest them. You don't have to take the bulb or all of the bulb. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a pocket knife and I'm gonna show you an alternative way to do this, and this is much more sustainable. Number one, find a nice plant with good greens, right? And simply cut it off. This is absolutely delicious. There's plenty of onion flavor in there. Every bit of this is delicious with the exception of the flower spike. This is perfectly acceptable to harvest, right? An alternative is, now I'm gonna get another one and I'm gonna cut it below the soil line. I'm gonna take off a portion of it and leave a portion of the bulb to grow back for next year. This is fairly common practice as well. I like to dig them bulb and all because if they don't sell, I replant them. I replant them in the wine cap beds we make on our farm. After they've done their initial compost down, I put them in there, and now that's basically a beautiful garden bed with this crop planted in it. And I do a 5-year cycle where I only hit one spot every 5 years, and I let it grow, and it's very sustainable. You could do it as frequently as every year if you were highly selective. One of my favorite ways to do it sustainably is I'm gonna dig this big patch, and all the little ones that I pull out, I'm gonna stick right back in there. Right? Everything that's smaller around than my pinky is going right back in. I'm gonna try to space them out kind of if you were looking at a die or dice from on top, like the number 5, right? So by the time I come back here in 5 years, that whole area is gonna be filled in, and we'll even increase into the other areas around it, and it will continue to spread. When I approach a big patch like this, I like to take a swath through the middle of it. So it becomes 2 patches that will grow together very rapidly, especially with me replanting. That allows that patch, which spreads through the roots. So what it'll do, and I'll dig another little bit here and we'll see this, is you'll see that these guys grow cespitose. That's your Scrabble word of the day. That means that they grow central to each other, right? What they actually have is a little root, much like ginseng, at the end of them that connects them. And so they'll start to reproduce that way. And so when I put one in here, if it reproduces by 3, 4, 5, by the time I come back, that's sustainable. When you're harvesting your ramps, you need to watch out very carefully that you're harvesting ramps and not something different. Growing right beside them, many of the time you will find this. This is a trout lily, right? It has a little bulb at the end. It has white and red on it and a green leaf, but that's where the similarity is really in. From what I understand, these guys will make you sick. So you want to make sure that you absolutely have the right thing and that you've inspected all of the product to make sure that it is what it's supposed to be so no one gets sick.
906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by Christ, your Northwoods neighborhood store. Morels might be at the top of the spring grocery list, but there's a lot more to shop for in the wild edibles section.
So here we are, early summer, late spring, and it is chicken of the woods season. Chicken of the woods, Latiparus sulpharis, also has a cousin known as Latiparus cincinnatus, which is the white chicken. This is the yellow chicken. The white chicken occurs on the root, away from the tree. The yellow chicken occurs on the tree itself, sometimes coming from where the root meets the ground, but almost always coming from the stump or on the bark, coming from the trunk rather. This is an oak tree. It's one of the most common hosts for chicken. It could also occur on various other trees, of course, as well. In particular, it would be on cottonwoods, hickories. If you happen to have a hickory, they're in the southern states referred to as hickory chickens. And so this mushroom tastes like chicken. And so whether people decided that the bird tastes like this mushroom first or that the mushroom tasted like that bird first remains to be determined, but it very much does taste like chicken, hence the name Chicken in the Woods. I'm gonna give this guy a gentle pull and we'll go ahead and look at it. The pore surface underneath, you see it's yellow. That's why it's called the yellow pore chicken. It differs from its cousin that grows on the ground called the white pore chicken. Of the two, the white pore is considered to be more delicious, but in this young, beautiful state, where it hasn't grown out dramatically and the edges or the margins are curled over, this is gonna be absolutely to die for, right? One of my favorite things to do with this in the kitchen is actually to make chicken fajitas with it. And it sounds as wonderful as it is. Just chop it up into what I call fajita strips and pretend like it's real chicken. And it's amazing. This makes a risotto that's out of this world. You can literally substitute it for chicken in any recipe, which is awesome. It's even great on the grill. I particularly like it in like a fettuccine Alfredo and things like that as well. This is considered one of the easier mushrooms to identify. And that's because of its vibrant color, and there really isn't anything that truly looks like it. You see how massive this fruiting is, and that's kind of indicative. I wouldn't be surprised to just see like this little amount or that small amount over here. This is a really nice, what we call rosette, happening on top of the stump, and it would get quite massive. These things can get 50, 70, 100 plus pounds off of one tree, and they generally will occur year after year, although sometimes they'll be what we call one and done, which is on a live healthy tree. They'll appear one time, never again. Tree continues living for 50, 100 years, never has any issues. Some foresters will tell you as soon as this appears, it's a death sentence for that tree. In my experience, that's not true at all. Wait and see what happens. And if it does come back year after year and it does kill the tree, well, now you have a wonderful resource in your backyard that's going to come back multiple times a year. I wouldn't be surprised to find more specimens on this stump about every 8 weeks or so. And we've just had a little bit of a warm, dry spell and then a heavy rain and cooler spell. And that's kind of nature's trigger for a lot of different mushrooms. So slugs have co-evolved with mushrooms forever. Many mushrooms, like the oyster mushroom, actually put off like an alcohol scent that attracts them. The slug comes in the mushroom and it crawls around in it, through it, eating it, everything. And it has that slimy, viscous surface. The whole time it's sitting there, it's getting covered in spores from the mushroom. Then it crawls off through the forest floor. And we've all seen what looks like the slug slime, glue, which almost looks like a clear layer of glue on the forest floor, on leaves, etc. And basically what's happening is it's gluing spores everywhere it's going afterwards. So it's spreading it. It's doing the mushroom's work in exchange for a good meal. And this has been happening right in front of us forever. So when you're harvesting this, one of the most important things when you break it off or cut it off is to look and see if there are wormholes in here. Right? If it's old and wormy, you don't want this. It's better off just to leave it there. And you'll see what looks like sawdust underneath these underneath these pores. And that's indicative that there would be worms in there as well. You are going to need a little bit of wash work because bugs love them as much as we do, of course. And this is a perishable food. You really only have maybe a week to 10 days at top end to eat this. Really cool fact, this is the only mushroom this works with. You don't have to cook this first. You can just freeze it. All the rest of the mushrooms, you cook first and then you freeze. This is the one mushroom you can stick right in the freezer and pull back out later, and it's just as good as when it went in, up to 6 months when it gets freezer burn. And so Chicken in the Woods, go out and check out your woods, go out to God's grocery store or the Uper stop and see what's out there waiting for you.
Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom. There's a few things I've learned from filming turkeys. There's a big difference between getting them in close and getting a shot. They're never going to come in where you expect them, and they're not going to stop where you want them. Fooling a turkey into shooting range makes for an exciting hunt. Fooling a bunch is even more of a rush. But a bunch of turkeys at once can make it nearly impossible to get a shot at one without the risk of hitting another.
These turkeys were roosted in the backside of this ridge, and we knew that from last night. We didn't know exactly where, but we knew in the vicinity. And there's this big group of a lot of hens, jakes, and multiple really nice toms. I didn't want to do a lot of calling off the roost, and I wanted to wait till they're down, working their way into this field, and then start calling. I really was focused on calling at the hens, not the toms, because those toms, as you can see, were mainly focused on the 8 hens they had, and they're strutting around them the whole time. So they worked their way off this field and got to the top of the hill, and I just kept cutting at those hens, and I kept trying to aggravate them. We had a decoy set up, just a one hen decoy. I just kept cutting, doing different calling sequences just to irritate those dominant hens, and it worked. They hung up a little bit, then they finally broke, and they came the rest of the way. Came right down, you know, that's 15 yards to our decoy, and Ryan didn't shoot. The main reason Ryan didn't shoot because 10 hens, there was 5, 6 jakes, and 2 or 3 toms in there. But the whole time those toms were more focused on strutting around those hens. They were right on them. So to get a shot, Ryan would probably have shot 2 or 3 birds. Something I was trying to do there was, like I was saying, I was trying to cut at those hens, particularly the dominant hens. Once I got them to come, they came right into that decoy, which is pretty surprising. I didn't think they would do that, especially with one lone decoy. But this early season is pretty challenging. A lot of times they're grouped up, especially these older birds. They flock up. We just had snow last week, which doesn't help. But as we get further on into the season, these toms will start breaking up after they breed these hens, and these hens start going off to nest. That's when you can kind of catch them midday. So we're gonna keep at it today, and there's a lot of turkeys in the woods, and that was a fun hunt. You can't beat that. We got really close right off the roost, and we had him at 15 yards. The footage was cool. It was challenging because he was sitting right here, and I was right over his shoulder. But I think he did the right thing, and we're gonna keep at him. It's still early, and a lot of season left. It's been kind of crazy here. We're at a spot where yesterday morning we were on a lot of birds. There's probably 7 of them gobbling. None kind of passing through the area. We would move off, come back later in the afternoon, and then they would be working their way through and in the areas we were that morning. We didn't connect yesterday. Last night we had a really cool hunt. Had turkeys come from 100 yards out. But Tom kind of snuck around us. I was trying to get footage, try to get over the shoulder on Steve, and I broke a twig. Turkey ran off. We went out this morning, not a lot of action, and then midday here, you know, almost noon, just checking spots. We heard a gobble. He was in the swamp here, so then we kind of hung up and tried to get as close as possible without him seeing us, get in his bubble. And we were able to do that. We threw this decoy out here, and these birds, I thought they were at the edge of this woods line, so what I feared was that those 2 toms see this hen, and a lot of times, especially this year, these birds have been seeing the hen decoy and just hanging up to where they are telling the hen to come to them. They're gobbling, they'll strut, they'll strut, they'll strut. So I was really upset halfway through this hunt because they were just sitting over here gobbling in the woods, and this hen was just sitting here, and they wouldn't break to come around the hen. So another thing too, you don't always need decoys, especially if you're in the woods. Right here we're kind of in an open area, so I felt like I needed to throw one out. But you don't always need decoys. You know, sometimes in the woods you get into some cover, that tom's really going to search for you, and it's going to give you more opportunities to shoot. He came on a line to about 80 yards, and he stuck to the edge of the woods. He would not move. We sat here for about a half an hour. I'm not good because I'm not patient at all, so I tried everything in my repertoire to get him that extra 50, 60 yards, and it took a long time. I was everything between scratching the leaves, acting like I was nesting up here, from walking back, acting like I was walking away, switching up some calls, trying to do everything I could, and I was ready to give up. And Ryan over here said that he heard a gobble right where they were, and there's 2 of them. So we set up, I did some more soft calling, and they both actually came in over the hill here about 50 yards, but they're behind an apple tree. I think he saw me because I didn't know he was there, and I moved a little bit to rustle the grass a little bit. He putted, and that wasn't good. So they hung up and they were walking away, but I just kept trying to purr, do natural things as if this hen was just hanging out here, picking through the grass or something. After 15 minutes, instead of walking away, they just swooped up at about 40, 45 yards about, and we had Steve take the shot because it was a wide open shot in this little grassy field here.
There we go, Steve. Atta boy, baby.
So this is the view of the turkeys as they approach this grassy field here. As you see, as they approach this hill, they could see that decoy. And this is where the turkeys were when Steve was able to shoot. This wasn't the ideal setup because if you look, you're able to see that we were kind of out in the open. The trees weren't big enough. We didn't have a good backdrop. So I think that's kind of why they were nervous as they approached us. We set up at that location because when we snuck in, these turkeys gobbled 80 yards into the woods. So we had to hurry up and set up, and that was the nearest trees we could set up in. So that's why I let Steve know that he had to take a shot whenever he had a good one presented to him. And what she did right here, it was wide open, and he was able to shoot that bird. The reason why I think this tom was hanging out in the swamp, first it's warm out, but I think there's a nested hen back here. It's the only reason for him not to come that extra 80 yards. My guess is he was just in the area of this nested hen and just waiting for her to get off the nest and then to group back up for their evening ahead. So it was really important for us to get kind of as close as possible in his circle to get him to get excited and kind of break and work our way. A lot of times this midday action isn't, you could really kill turkeys, you know, so don't give up, just keep at it. And things like this happen sometimes. So he put an awesome shot on him and got his first turkey, and it's a really nice turkey. It's a beautiful beard on it, probably a 3-year-old bird. Really cool for your first turkey. I remember my first turkey, it was Jake, so it's a really cool turkey. Beautiful, 60 degrees. It's just everything you could hope for your first turkey. Good gobbling action, midday. So Steve's pretty excited. He's gonna try to go. He's gonna smoke this turkey, hopefully in the near future, and enjoy what nature gives you.
Feel free to join us on Facebook or visit us at 906outdoors.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up to get on the 906 Outdoors email list. We'll send you an occasional email with tips, recipes, and more. You'll also be eligible for giveaways just for being on the list. Thanks for watching, and we invite you to join us next week for another adventure right here on 906 Outdoors.